I know it's been a while since season 4 of Castlevania was released. Okay, maybe a little bit more than a while. But recently I rewatched the entire series and I just have to talk about one character from the show in particular, and that's Isaac. When most people think of Castlevania, they think of characters like Dracula, Alucard, Trevor, or even Sypha. But I think of Isaac. To me, Isaac is not only the coolest character in the show because he throws ridiculous hands while being a Forge Master. Like, dude can control entire armies of night monsters, but decides to use his hands anyway because he's just that guy. But more importantly, I think Isaac embodies the message of Castlevania better than any other character, even Dracula. Because in the start of the story, Isaac is this one dimensional, loyal servant to Dracula. And the first time I saw him, I literally remember saying to myself, this guy is going to be an annoying loser. Which is incredibly ironic since he ended up being my favorite character in the entire series. But in the beginning, Isaac has an absolute sense of loyalty to Dracula. And this really annoyed me because I hate characters who are loyal for the sake of being loyal and lack any of their own purpose. I understand if they love who they're being loyal to or truly believe in them, but neither of those cases are really true for Isaac. Obviously, he didn't romantically love Dracula, but he didn't even really believe in him either. Isaac says outright that he knows Dracula's going mad, that he knows to at least some degree he's being lied to, and that the entire war on humanity is really just Dracula's prolonged suicide. But still, Isaac remains wholeheartedly loyal to Dracula because he doesn't know what else to do. Isaac says it himself. He was a blade to be used by others. In characters like that, who lack their own sense of purpose and accept being a cog in someone else's wheel purely because they don't have the resolve or courage to create something of their own, are so boring to me. So I completely wrote him off. But everything changed the moment that Dracula threw him through the magical mirror, saving his life. Because in that single moment, Dracula not only prevented what was honestly Isaac's own suicide attempt by staying behind in the castle, but also caused him to be reborn. Because Isaac is forced into this situation where he has nothing, no relationships, no status, and no master to serve, which end up being the perfect blank slate for him to create something new, something that for the first time in his life is his rather than someone else's. And this is where Isaac begins developing at a rate that's incomparable to any other character in the show, in at least in my opinion, to any other character in anime, resulting in Isaac creating his own army and deciding to let go of his obsession with Dracula. He starts traveling and getting stronger, all with the goal of punishing the human race, the people who wronged him, but this time it'll be done by his own hands, or monsters. However, during this period, he meets many people, a multitude of which wrong him once again and solidify his revenge, but he also meets a few people who are good and kind to him. And one of my favorite parts of Isaac's character is his appreciation for life. Whether it's night creatures or people, he always gives them a chance. He's willing to talk, he's willing to move forward without violence, even though most people don't accept his mercy. And through talking with these few good people, like the merchant and the captain, Isaac realizes the flaws in his own philosophy. Killing the entire race would just be perpetuating the suffering he himself endured. It would extinguish the precious lives of innocent people who had nothing to do with his suffering. And unlike any other character in the story, like Carmilla or Dracula, Isaac realizes his flaws and changes. He grows instead of continuing down a dead end path. He's willing to sacrifice his ego, his pride, and learn from people far weaker and less powerful than himself, resulting in an epiphany where Isaac realizes that deep down, what he hates isn't humans or vampires. It's people of any race or species that decide to destroy rather than create. So he changes plans. Instead of being the ultimate destroyer that punishes the human race, he's gonna be a pillar of progress and make the world a better place for people in the future. And when Isaac finally does take down Styria and slays Carmilla, he does so not for Dracula's revenge or even his own. He does it because she's a stain on the world, a person who only takes and destroys. While Hector, despite being his main target, he lets live and treats him well because he knows that Hector's not a destructive person, just one who's been controlled and manipulated. During the raid on Styria and the conversation between Hector and Isaac, we're given some subtle but crucial insight into how exactly Isaac is changed. Throughout the entire battle, Isaac once again is very hands-on. He kills countless of Hector's night creatures and even deals the finishing blow to Carmilla himself. But through all of this, he never uses his trademark flogging whip, only his forge knife. And while it's easy to overlook this, it doesn't really make practical sense. We see throughout the entire story, even just a couple episodes before this, that Isaac is incredibly skilled and comfortable with the whip. So how come in one of his toughest and most important battles, he just doesn't use it? Well, it has nothing to do with the usefulness of the weapon, or even his expertise with it. It's a symbolic development, because the flogging whip was Isaac's way of remembering and atoning for the past through masochistic punishment. But once Isaac is reborn and grows into something greater, he leaves the whip behind, representing his freedom from the past and focus on the future. And this growth is noticed and pointed out by Hector, who says he's never seen Isaac so happy, which is really strange given their circumstances. But Isaac's no longer the person he once was. He's better, he's happier, and he's himself, free from blind loyalty or past trauma, and filled with the resolve to make the world a better place. And Isaac is so compelling because he embodies what it means to be human. In the span of a year, he shifted between beliefs, between philosophies, between purposes, allowing him to continually evolve and eventually become his true self. And this is really illustrated by what he tells Hector when he decides to let him live. Hector understandably says, "Aren't you gonna kill me to get revenge for what I did to Dracula?" And Isaac says, "No, revenge is for children, and we are not children." This single line perfectly sums up the growth of Isaac and the entire message of Castlevania as a whole, because the entire show is about people having to change. Trevor has to become a better person like Sypha, while Sypha has to be more carefree and unapologetic like Trevor. And Alucard has to be more like both, leaving behind his empty and cold exterior and letting others into his life. While other characters like Dracula and Carmilla represent the consequences for staying the same, or not growing up, as Isaac puts it, which is failure and death. This creates a beautifully ironic contrast because Isaac, who is a mere mortal, grows up, accepting rapid change and moving forward into the future, while the vampires who have lived for centuries remain as children because they cannot. And Isaac's path to growing up is by far the hardest of any other character in the show. He has to leave behind everything that he thought he was, and he has to completely abandon his own motivations and outlook on life, all before he can become something new. But he does, and even when he doesn't know what to do or what to believe in, he doesn't give up. He keeps moving forward, learning and progressing until eventually he sees the light. And he sees the man, not child, man that he can become. And he sprints courageously and unapologetically into becoming that person. And when he tells Hector that revenge is for children, he rebukes his own past, not out of anger or regret, but out of newfound wisdom instead, allowing Isaac to become the man that Dracula knew was worth saving and the man that Isaac was always meant to be.